Chapter 17. Survey Research. Introduction. Survey research is one of the most common forms of research engaged by educational researchers. It involves researchers asking, usually, a large group of people questions about a particular topic or issue. The asking of questions, all related to the issue of interest, is called a survey, and it can be done in a number of ways: face-to-face with individuals or groups, mail, or telephone. Each method of survey research has its advantages and disadvantages, but the purpose of all methods of survey research is to obtain answers to a set of carefully designed and administered questions from a large group of people. What is a survey? Researchers are often interested in the opinions of a large group of people about a particular topic or issue. They ask a number of questions, all related to the issue, to find answers. Most surveys possess three basic characteristics: 1. The collection of information; 2. From a sample; 3. By asking questions to describe some aspects of the population of which the sample is a part. 2. Why are surveys conducted? The major purpose of all surveys is to describe the characteristics of a population. Rarely is the population as a whole studied, however. Instead, a sample is surveyed and a description of the population is inferred from what the sample reveals. 3. Types of surveys. There are two major types of surveys: a cross-sectional survey and a longitudinal survey. A. Cross-sectional surveys. A cross-sectional survey collects information from a sample that has been drawn from a predetermined population. The information is collected at just one point in time, although the time it takes to collect all of the data may take anywhere from a day to a few weeks or more. When an entire population is surveyed, it is called a census. B. Longitudinal surveys. In a longitudinal survey, information is collected at different points in time to study changes over time. Three longitudinal designs are commonly employed in survey research: trend studies, cohort studies, and panel studies. In a trend study, different samples from a population whose members may change are surveyed at different points in time. In a cohort study, different samples from a population whose members do not change are surveyed at different points in time. In a panel study, the same sample of individuals is surveyed at different times over the course of the survey. Surveys are not suitable for all research topics, especially those that require observation of subjects or the manipulation of variables. 4. Survey research and correlational research. It is not uncommon for researchers to examine the relationship of responses to one question in a survey to another, or of a score based on one set of survey questions to a score based on another set. In such instances, the techniques of correlational research described in Chapter 15 are appropriate. Suppose a researcher is interested in studying the relationship between attitude toward school of high school students and their outside of school interests. A questionnaire containing items dealing with these two variables could be prepared and administered to a sample of high school students, and then relationships could be determined by calculating correlation coefficients or by preparing contingency tables. V. Steps in survey research. A. Defining the problem. The problem to be investigated by means of a survey should be sufficiently interesting and important to motivate individuals to respond. Each question should relate to one or more of the survey's objectives. B. Identifying the target population. Almost anything can be described by means of a survey. The focus of study in a survey is called the unit of analysis. Although typically people, units of analysis can also be objects: clubs, companies, classrooms, schools, government agencies, and others. Survey data are collected from a number of individual units of analysis to describe those units, These descriptions are then summarized to describe the population that the units of analysis represent. As in other types of research, the group of persons that is the focus of the study is called the target population. To make trustworthy statements about the target population, it must be very well defined. C. Choosing the mode of data collection. There are 4 basic ways to collect data in a survey: by direct administration of the survey instrument to a group, by mail or internet, by telephone, or by personal interview. Each method has advantages and disadvantages. D. Selecting the sample. The subjects to be surveyed should be selected, randomly, if possible, from the population of interest. Researchers must ensure, however, that the subjects they intend to question possess the desired information and that they will be willing to answer these questions. Accordingly, it is often a good idea for researchers to conduct a preliminary inquiry among potential respondents to assess their receptivity. E. Preparing the instrument. The most common types of instruments used in survey research are the questionnaire and the interview schedule. They are virtually identical, except that the questionnaire is usually self-administered by the respondent, while the interview schedule is administered verbally by the researcher, or trained assistant. F. Preparing the cover letter. The cover letter should be brief and addressed specifically to the individual being asked to respond. It should explain the purpose of the survey, emphasize the importance of the topic of the research, and, it is hoped, engage the respondent's cooperation. It should indicate the researcher's willingness to share the results of the study once it is completed. G. Training interviewers. The general topics to be covered in training interviewers should always include at least the following. O. Procedures for contacting respondents and introducing the study. All interviewers should have a common understanding of the purposes of the study. O. The conventions that are used in the design of the questionnaire with respect to wording and instructions for skipping questions, if necessary, so that interviewers can ask the questions in a consistent and standardized way. O. Procedures for probing inadequate answers in a non-directive way. O. Procedures for recording answers to open-ended and closed-ended questions. O. Rules and guidelines for handling the interpersonal aspects of the interview in a non-biased way. H. Using an interview to measure ability. Although the interview has been used primarily to obtain information on variables other than cognitive ability, an important exception can be found in the field of developmental and cognitive psychology. Interviews have been used extensively in this field to study both the content and processes of cognition. Other psychologists have used interviewing procedures to study thought processes and sequences employed in problem solving. 6. Non-response. In almost all surveys, some members of the sample will not respond. This is referred to as non-response. Both total non-response and item non-response are major problems in survey research that seem to be increasing in recent years. This is a problem because those who do not respond are very likely to differ from respondents in terms of how they would answer the survey questions. A. Total non-response. Calton points out that total non-response can occur in interview surveys for any of the following reasons. Intended respondents can refuse to be interviewed, not be at home when the interviewer calls, be unable to take part in the interview for various reasons, such as illness, deafness, inability to speak the language, or sometimes cannot even be located. B. Item non-response. Partial gaps in the information provided by respondents can also occur for a variety of reasons. The respondent may not know the answer to a particular question, he or she may find certain questions embarrassing or perhaps irrelevant, the respondent may be pressed for time, and the interviewer may decide to skip over part of the questions, the interviewer may fail to record an answer. 7. Problems in the instrumentation process in survey research. Several threats to the validity of the instrumentation process in surveys can cause individuals to respond differently from how they might otherwise respond. Some events might upset or otherwise affect various individuals, causing them to respond to the interview questions in a different way from how they would have responded if the event had not occurred. If the conditions under which individuals are questioned in interview studies are somewhat unusual, during the dinner hour, in poorly lit rooms, and so on, they may react in certain ways unrelated to the nature of the questions themselves. Finally, the characteristics of a data collector, such as garish dress, insensitivity, rudeness, and use of offensive language, can affect how individuals respond, causing them to react in part to the data collector rather than to the questions. 8. Evaluating threats to internal validity in survey research. Threats to the internal validity of survey research include location, instrumentation, instrument decay, and mortality. 9. Data analysis in survey research. The percentage of the total sample responding for each item on a survey questionnaire should be reported, as well as the percentage of the total sample who chose each alternative for each question.